Welcome everyone. Good afternoon already. Thank you so much for coming. I start by acknowledging that UBC's Vancouver campus is located on the traditional territory of the Musqueam people and recognize that you may come from lands whose ancestral caretakers deserve our recognition. Today's talk could not be more relevant and timely, I think. It is titled Engaging and Inclusive Learning with Generative AI, Classroom Tools and Ideas. In this joint presentation, Dr. Neil Leverage and Dr. Qingshi will share innovative real-world applications of generative AI that are transforming the classroom experience. Neil will demonstrate how tools like the AI-generated voiceovers and the AI contribution skill from his communication strategies textbook help students engage with content more accessibly while promoting responsible and transparent use of AI. Qingshi will showcase how Claude AI's artifacts, we can learn what those are, have been used for rapid prototyping in class activities grounded in his teaching philosophy of encourage, inspire, reflect. Together they will offer practical insights into how GenAI can enhance student engagement, foster inclusivity, and empower learners to explore AI as a creative partner in their academic journey. Was this talk description generated by AI?
My part is generated by AI, but I kind of took a look at it and revised that. So, but I don't remember it was that long.
Okay, no, it's fantastic. Okay. Neil is an assistant professor of teaching in the Department of Wood Science at UBC with a passion for integrating cutting-edge technology into education. He harnesses generative AI to create engaging and accessible learning experience for diverse student communities. Qingshi is an assistant professor of industrial ecology. As a big fan of sports and video games, he has integrated Gen AI and machine learning in general into different learning activities for students to enjoy an interactive educational experience. I would like to thank the Dean's Office for organizing everything, the marketing team with Natasha, Michelle, Frederick. There's an enormous amount of effort put into an event like this, so thank you so much for that. And to all of you coming in these really busy times of April, it's not a good time. We're all busy submitting grades and things. So I really appreciate you being here. And before we start, this will be recorded because we post a YouTube video. If you have any issues with that, let me know at the end. You may appear in YouTube. Just let me know. All right, so without further ado, an applause for the speakers and for the audience.
I get to go first. Yay. First of all, thank you very much for coming out. I know this is a tough. I had to pull myself away from marking. The other called a lot of work. So I'm just going to start with a bit of a story. Last summer, I was taking some CTLT for these little things, and it was kind of an all-day thing. So I was spending about probably 6 to 7 hours in front of a screen all day. And then I got home and we had homework for the next day. And it's like, I was looking at the computer screen and I'm like, my eyes are so tired. I don't want to look at this anymore. And then I noticed there's a PDF. And in the PDF, it has the reader. So I thought, oh, great, I will have this read to me. I can close my eyes and relax, get all the information I need without getting a headache. So I clicked on the immersive reader, and it was horrible. The way that the reader was talking sounded monotone, like a robot. It was, I couldn't think about anything about the learning content. I could only focus on how bad this voice over this generated voice was. Since then, I hope they've had some improvements. So I was thinking about my students and how my students are in front of a computer all day, and then they go home and do homework, and then they have to, watch a video or something or create something for my class. They have to do reading. So I thought, how can we make this more accessible? So I thought, what if I use AI generated voiceovers? Because I've done voiceovers myself and I kind of don't want to hear my own voice. And I thought, and it takes an awfully long time to create a script that is workable and you can do it in one take, or in my case, 20 takes. Is pretty time consuming. So I discovered that in artlist.io, they have voiceover generators. They have all different kinds. It was amazing. So I thought, what if I had this kind of voiceover generated for the chapter in my textbook for the students? So while working on that, it's like, okay, so I went ahead, plugged it in. There's a few issues here and there. And I thought, oh, you know, that's pretty good. So show this one. Here's kind of what it looks like. So basically, this is our first chapter. And we have to remember, you know, I have forestry students. Communication course isn't number one on their priority list. It's probably maybe second or second to last. So I need to make it really engaging. Previously, term one, we would have reading quizzes for the week. Reading quizzes were like 70, 80% usually, so not too bad. A lot of times I thought, I'm not even sure if they read it. So some of the grades were kind of low. So I thought, how can we engage students more? And so I thought, you know, if I don't want to read, what if I have AI do the voiceover? So this is my first attempt. It was normal boring.
Foundations. Communication in natural resources. How information.
This one is just reading through all the text. That's it. But it's in a much better voice. It sounds a lot more natural than the PDF reader, which was very
Influences.
robotic.
Environmental perceptions and behaviors. Effective communication is critical.
Okay, so that sounds good and it's cool, but what if I'm not in the mood to listen to the chapter like this? So I thought, okay, let's take the whole chapter and put it into AI and say, can you create a story that goes through some of these ideas and has the same learning outcomes as the chapter? And let's make it a little more applicable to forestry. And then I was thinking, oh, what if we play around with the genres a little bit? Why not have a fairy tale instead of just something reading it? So this is kind of what we ended up with for a fairy tale.
Foundations. Communication in natural resources. Communication is powerful. It shapes how people see the world and how they act. In the natural resources sector, where issues like climate change and sustainability are critical, how we communicate makes a huge difference. Today, we'll explore the foundations of communication and how it impacts perceptions and behaviors.
So with a lot of guidance, AI was able to use the fairy tale genre, focus on the learning outcomes, and create a story that the students could listen to. And fairy tale, maybe some preferred documentary, a little bit more serious.
Foundations. Communication in natural resources. Picture this. You're deep in the forest, surrounded by the towering trees of British Columbia. The air is cool, crisp, and you can hear the rustle of wildlife all around you. Now, imagine that you're not.
So depending on which approach that the students want to take, they can choose one of these four. Now, I made one, I'm not sure if this one is exactly the best one. The one that I made for myself is called Serenity, because I was so tired. Let's see.
Foundations. Communication in natural resources. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine you're standing in the heart of a quiet forest, where the only sounds are the gentle rustle of leaves and the soft flow of a nearby stream. The air feels fresh, and everything seems connected. In these moments, communication with nature feels effortless. But when it comes to communicating about these very spaces, about the natural world and the challenges it faces, the task becomes more delicate. It requires clarity, thoughtfulness, and a deep understanding of how people listen, learn, and respond.
It worked very well. I think I was asleep within 5 minutes. Maybe there's some subliminal messaging going on while you're asleep. I'm not really sure. I had the quizzes, the weekly reading quizzes after. And for the previous semester, the first question, did you read the textbook? A lot of the students never checked it. Second semester, I put in, how did you read the textbook? Did you read it? Did you listen to 1, 2, 3, or 4? And a lot of the students checked all of them. The grading for the quizzes is now averaging about 95 to 100%. These are just based on quiz grades, so I haven't done the research part of this yet, but it was very interesting because it gave the students a way to engage that was not normal, it was different, but they're still getting all the learning outcomes. So they were considerably more engaged. The other part, let's see. So we had some with no background music. So I was really trying out a few different things. This professor, forestry students, who do you want to interact with? So I'm just trying out a few different things to see what really catches on with the students. And then I found Notebook LM. So with Notebook LM, I can load in the PDF and have a podcast made of the chapter. So I put it in and...
Want to seriously up your communication game? Well, we're diving deep into a guide specifically designed to help natural resource professionals do just that. You might be thinking, what does that have to do with me?
And you're right to ask that. But what's fascinating is that while this guide is for folks explaining complex scientific topics, it's packed with strategies anyone can use to become a more engaging communicator.
Okay, so it's for everyone. What's the secret sauce? Is it all about finding the perfect words to say?
So they basically go through all the ideas throughout the chapter, discuss it, and I said, I should take notes from this. This is really quite good. So this one I think I did it around January, and it was very interesting. Since then, Notebook LM has upped their game. So now I'm currently in the midst of recording 3 people podcast, the 2 AI and myself. You can do it live on the fly and record it. So now I can interrupt them, stop them from talking and say, what about this? And they will answer in an appropriate manner, hopefully. These things, of course, you always have to check once you're finished. But this one was a very interesting way to give an oversight of the chapter before the students jump in to read it, so that they kind of know what they're getting. They're getting the surface bit of the information and in a way that's kind of hooking them. And it's getting them to engage with the material. And then they can jump into reading the chapter, which goes in a little bit deeper. So that's kind of what I'm doing to engage students with reading in the chapter. The other part that I am looking at is from the teacher's perspective. Right now, how do we tell students what AI they can use, what they can't use? The lines are all blurred and all crossed. If you tell students there's no AI, you can't. What about Grammarly? What about spell check? Those are all done with AI now. So at what levels? So I created a contribution scale, AI contribution scale, so that students would understand this is what's allowed, this is kind of what we expect. And these are the tools that you can use. So for this, so I did a scale level 0, which is no AI at all. You're not, no AI. That's like, you make spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, that's okay. All the way to 10, which is use what you like. So for this, and I made it very student facing, and because it's in the OER textbook, students can leave messages and tell me about what other tools that they're using or finding. I can add them or take them away. So yeah, if this is a 10, you can use AI, it's your research buddy to help you. I only have one assignment that is a 10, and that's a communique that I asked this undergrad students to make. They can use the AI to help them create a poster, to do a website, many different things that maybe they don't really have the background to understand it. They don't have the courses on, you know, this is how you create a communique about a forest fire coming up. But this way, at least they can help and they have the tools to get it done. The students, actually, they did really well this year. And this goes down, you know, depending on, like, make your sentences shine. And also at level 5, you use AI just to make your sentences sound better, to make your point of view come across clear. So this, I wouldn't use this one if it was a writing task for my course. If it's a writing task, we're focusing on your ability to write. This would bypass that ability. So I wouldn't use this on, say, the data commentary writing that the students have to do. However, if it was something about writing, I would say probably level 2, and things that you can use, you know, even things, give them ideas for scheduling to miss, like, so that they don't miss assignments, when to study as a study guide. We tested Studiosity. I'm not sure if you know about that. UBC had a pilot with Studiosity. Studiosity is AI that helps students achieve their learning outcome. It doesn't give them the answers right away. And we did a survey of 35 undergraduate students, and basically none of them used Studiosity because they wanted to get the answer now. So this is kind of what we're facing, even though we can say, you know, here's a UBC approved tool that you can use. On the other hand, we have students going, thank you for that. I'm going to use the non-approved tool because that's going to give me an answer now. So these are students who basically have been born since high-speed internet. So yeah, it's becoming much faster all the time. So I thought when we're using the AI tool, the contribution, students know upfront exactly what to use and what not to use. And at the end, if they cross the line, if they use too much or something, then things can happen. Then I have some, you know, I said, this is the level, you should agree to that, I would hope. There was one issue I had last year. As I had asked a student if he had used AI to complete his assignment. He said, no. I'm like, but no, it was like the perfect 5-paragraph essay, something that AI would produce. I said, are you sure? And he said, no, 100% no. I use AI to learn how to write. I was like, oh, you followed too closely. So while students can be using it for good, students also use it for evil. So we have to sort of keep our eye out for that. It's going to get more difficult in the future. So I think using AI in a way that is going to engage students and not force them back into a corner where they feel that they have to use AI to produce a full thing. I think this is kind of the approach that we're going to need to take is, making our pedagogy up another level rather than just saying to the students, you have to produce. You have to do this high level, maybe within a certain amount of time, and putting these constraints and forcing the students to find that they need a way out, and the way out may be using AI. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed these. I'm going to turn it over to Qingshi, and we will have some questions after.
All right, thank you, Neil. Yeah, I'm gonna actually continue. Let's figure out that to go back. Okay, so. So you want to show this as well?
Yeah, if you want to check out the communication book, there you go.
Yeah, and I really like the AI scale kind of page. I will definitely use it in my syllabus to kind of give students a better kind of guidance about how they can use AI. It kind of also leads to. Okay, so also I want to actually pick up on the discussion on the philosophy part. Right? So you basically said we currently probably don't have a very, let's say, agreed upon philosophy of, how do we actually encourage the use of AI in teaching? Right, we're getting there, right? So that's why I want to share a few of my kind of philosophy, and some of you probably will echo with this, right? So the first one, as Neil mentioned, most of us want to encourage students to use AI, right? So because that's, in the future, there will be other expectation from the employer. You should have AI literacy, right? So you should, know how to use certain tools, but to what extent, right? So they don't actually follow too closely, right? So like what I did usually is, of course, you put that into the syllabus, right? So you can use AI for this, and this, but again, really like the scale, that will make things more explicit, right? And I also, from time to time, talk about this when I was teaching, like for example, I'll say, okay, here is the statistics. That's older ones. Can you find the newer ones? How can you quickly find this, right? So do you use Google? Do you use Perplexity AI? Have you checked your source? Do you use ChatGPT? Right? So kind of building this kind of little bits of encouragement throughout teaching every lecture will be helpful as well, right? And also, I think we also can use AI to encourage a diverse way of learning. Because if you think about learning, text is one of the ways of learning, right? So visualization, and now use voice is actually very helpful as well. So AI actually enable us to use different modes of information for students to learn. So we can have a good combination in that case. So this is encouragement. I think everybody's trying to do this. That's a good first step. And then sometimes we also need to inspire students to do the rest. So it's sometimes relatively easy to say, you should use this, right? So then many people will be like, yes, but I don't have an idea, but how did I get started, right? So some of you probably really appreciate what just put together. It's a very evolved example, and then, but you probably think, how do I get started, right? So how do I get a small step? So if you're in this kind of mode, you're in for a treat. So that's most of my presentation. After this slide, right? So you need to inspire students to show them you can do, this type of thing using certain type of AI tools. That's also very important. And another important thing I think we haven't done enough is reflection, right? So we're so busy with rolling out new learning activities, creating assignments, right? Getting students to do a lot of activities, but we don't really give them also ourselves enough time to reflect or what worked. Why it worked, what didn't work, why did it work, right? So how can you improve it? So that's also part of the kind of the rest of the presentation you'll see is why we want to kind of apply this experiment approach, right? You want to run small experiments, you observe, then if something actually worked, you document that, and hopefully that's not bad luck, right? If something didn't work, how can you make it better? So, so that's kind of my philosophy of gradually apply AI to teaching. So the first example I want to show you is the baseball card, I believe the QR code still works. Is, and also in my bio, I mentioned that I'm a big fan of game and sports. I'm still but I don't have time, so I'll kind of get back to that. But if you play baseball, right, so that's very common. In a baseball card, you have a photo, you have some key attributes describing your skills, and then you have a radar plot showing how good you are. So ideally, you want to have the whole, like a radar plot get covered. Right? So of course, I learned this from a book published by Ray Dalio. Anybody know this person? So you probably need to know more because he's the co-founder of world's largest hedge fund, Breakwater, and he has this book called Principles, which gives you really good advice about how can you actually organize your life at work and things like that. One of my students actually recommended it to me. Then in one of the chapters, he mentioned he designed this baseball card for his associates and for them to kind of do the self-assessment. For example, at the beginning of the year, you feel like those are my skills, and I kind of grade myself. Right? So I'm good at certain areas, but not the other areas. And then for example, after a year, you reassess yourself and see if you grow. But for this particular practice, I use this as an icebreaker for one of my tutorials, because I have like around 40 students. It's in most cases really awkward to talk to other people when you want to team up, right? So you need to have certain like a medium to kind of as a conversation opener. So basically I ask them to actually create a digital card for themselves, and you basically then show this on your phone and talk to the other classmates, and you try to find a team that you can complement each other by looking at, for example, the radar plot here and some of the fun facts, right? So and of course a side learning is that if you try this, if you have an Android phone, it actually didn't work. Even if you have an iPhone, you have to select the number in order to change it. So none of these actually I encountered when I was designing this using my laptop. So I got all these kind of very interesting feedback from the students, and I took that as an opportunity. Basically, I showed them like that's what the experiment is about, right? Sometimes it work on your laptop, but sometimes it work in certain conditions, but it didn't. But that's fine. That's what the learning is about, right? So kind of that's also kind of my philosophy is took every opportunity you can actually emphasize your some of the learning opportunities for the students. That would be also useful. So that's one example. And oh, by the way, I haven't mentioned this, is that you can use Cloud AI to basically create this. And if you sign up for the free account, you got, I believe, 6 prompts per day for free. So you can do this using 1 or 2 prompts. So you can do this with the free account. And then another example I want to show you is you have to use the pro account because it's highly evolved. You have to use a series of prompts back and forth. It is a solar panel analyzer. So that's for one of the course I teach, the second year course, I teach alternative energy systems, right? So, but we don't really have a lot of lab in my course. We actually don't have any lab, like a physical lab in my course. So I try to give them a little bit more like hands-on interactive learning. In this case, that was for teaching the solar panel module where I talked about the very important connection between renewable energy system and a material, right? So in order to have a clean energy transition, you actually rely on a lot of material. And then you probably want to look into how you can actually get a solar panel to get off, and how you estimate what's the availability of the material from those solar panels if you kind of take them off the roof, right? So what it does is basically I use Claude AI and then generate this artifact, and you can publish this and everybody can use it. And then what it does is that you can upload a image like this, right? And then you can start drawing. Try to kind of, it's a bit clunky, but kind of scope out where the solar panels are, right? And then once it's done, you can just finish it. It's kind of then segment out the solar panel, And then you can choose the solar panel type, and then you can basically also change some assumptions about the material intensity of the solar panel and all these things. So basically, this gives students a little bit, like a hands-on experience of what the knowledge they just learned from listening to me, and how you can translate that into real life kind of application in this case. Okay. And of course, this also is a example showing you that one of the challenges we're facing in the university is that if we require everybody to use paid version, that might actually cause some problem related to equity, right? So like this one, you cannot do using the free version. So how can we break this barrier in terms of using the full capacity of the GenAI tool is also something we right. So then I kind of use that as the inspiration. Then I inspire my students to use the same tool, but of course I didn't have to pay for it. So that's why those are really kind of primitive examples. They only remember, they only have 6 prompts per student. So they team up. So if you have 4 students, you got 24 prompts to deliver a final prototype. So that's from one of my 4th year course. That was a tutorial where I asked them to look at the technology that's discontinued by Google. So there's a website called Killed by Google. So they have all this kind of very fancy technology. For whatever reason, they discontinued. And I asked my student to say, okay, pick one and think of this as a pitch competition. You want to pitch Google to reinvest into this particular technology because that can help improve the sustainability of the society. So that's overarching question. Then in order to do a pitch, they need to build a prototype to show if it works, what's gonna look like, right? So for example, there's one that shows you the environmental sensitivity mapper. Basically says that, okay, you can use this tool and kind of draw out the area where you will have the high risk of biodiversity loss. And Google can basically support this kind of tool for everybody to actually go in there and understand what's the risk of the biodiversity loss, for example, in the forest and everything. And then it just kind of encouraged them to translate their creativity into some hands-on interactive tools they can actually show people. Because in many cases, like me, I feel like, hey, I have a lot of ideas, but I cannot draw them because I'm really good at drawing. So I cannot show people what I think. But nowadays, if you have, for example, AI, you can, with a few prompts, like show people what's called a minimal likable product. You've probably heard of a minimal viable product. And there's another concept called minimal likable product. They said, you want to show something that probably didn't work. But if you show to people, people say, I like it. So that's actually a very good first step, right? They can build upon that and say, okay, I will make it a minimal viable product. So that's that. And then, so those are the experiments. And then I also kind of try to preach to students saying that, okay, if you look at nowadays, if you want to be an entrepreneur, right? So previously on the left-hand side, if you want to monetize your idea, commercialize your idea, you need to have a lot of investment into people, right? So you need to hire people with very specific and deep knowledge. You need to build infrastructure, right? You need to buy, if you do any computer model development, you need to buy, servers and high performance computers and all these things. And then your idea probably does not really matter until you have this foundation, right? So there's a lot of upfront investment. But nowadays, with GenAI, a lot of those investments are already done for you. Of course, you have to pay for the API, cost and token and all those things, right? So your idea actually matters a lot more nowadays. And so basically, at this time, the cost for experimenting and testing out the idea becomes a lot lower. So that's what I did in the past is really encourage, because I can see some of our students are really kind of having this entrepreneurial spirit, right? So I just want to show them how to actually do it. So it's, the human idea. And another thing I want to also mention, this is more on the requirement side, is I always like to use this example So as I mentioned, right, so nowadays, because of the job, I don't really have the luxury of watching like 2 hours movies, right? So, and also even for sports, I won't only watch highlights. So, but I have my strategy, right? So I usually take my lunch time, I watch a 15-minute movie summary, so that I actually still enjoy the movie. So, and then as an analogy, is that if you want to use GenAI, you're actually basically delegate some of work to GenAI, right? So you delegate the work of the entire movie, this kind of task to the user, and then feed you back the summary, right? So I use this as an analogy to students. That think about this, your very first step is actually delegating work to AI, right? So, and then you need to ask a few questions, right? So if you want to watch a movie, right? So which movie do you want to have a summary, right? So I like for me, I always want to do like a summary of some detective movies. You know, I just need to understand the plot, right? I don't need to know this kind of very long backstory, as compared to if I want to watch a Marvel Avengers movie. Yes, I want to see the details. I want to see those kind of very fancy visual effects. So I don't want people to summarize this for me because you cannot see that. Right, so you need to think about what task you want to delegate to AI. So that's the very first step. And then the second step is which, like in this case, which YouTube channel you want to follow. So you probably know that there are certain channel that's better than the others, right? And the analogy for using AI for your assignment, for your research is that, okay, which tool is going to do the job, right? So especially nowadays, every day there are new tools get rolled out. You really need to be deliberate about which tool you want to use because they all have their pros and cons, right? The third one is which part of the movie you want to rewatch. Sometimes after I watch, a short summary, I will go back and watch a full movie, right? So because those are some details I want to know more. It's also the same thing when you use GenAI tool for your assignment, for your research. Think about, part of work do you want to validate, right? So what part of work you want to validate? Which part of work you want to probably just check and yourself to as a part of the learning process, right? So another example is that I just had a chat with a lot of my students this morning, and we talk about nowadays you have a lot of AI assisted coding tools, right? So as many of my students knows, I encourage them to use Cursor for coding. I offer to pay for their annual subscription because it just makes things a lot quicker to write code. And then my student rightfully mentioned that, yeah, that's good, we get job done, but I don't feel like I'm learning anything, right? So for those who don't know Cursor, basically that's an AI assisted coding plugin. Where you basically say, I want to have this function, you write a prompt, and it's generated an entire function for you. And the 90% chance it runs. So your coding become prompt engineering, basically. Right? So, and then that can be a problem for certain majors, especially if you're a computer science student who probably won't pass interview, right? Then for like students in my group, because we do coding and we're not computer science. So passing interviews is probably not our major concern. So that's fine. But also we still need to, as I told my students, you still need to think about the learning part, right? So Cursor can do everything for you, but what did you learn, right? So like you can still, for example, if Cursor write a very sophisticated script, you should still look at a function it writes and think about why it write it this way. How can you use it for another project? Right, so like what I do is sometimes I read other people's code, it works, that's fine. And then I will basically think, why does this person use this particular library? Why can't you use the other ones? And then as soon as you start to ask this question, you can go back to the AI tool and ask this question. So it will tell you why people probably use this. That helps you to learn. So this deliberate learning process nowadays will have to be enforced by yourself. So that's something I kind of try to emphasize during my teaching. So that's kind of an example of the reflection part. It's very important because I feel like if we miss the reflection part, we'll just be very comfortable with what AI can do for us, and that might actually cause some problem. Okay. I'll spend basically last 1 or 2 minutes if I So, yeah, then I think you probably also perceive is that we have so many AI tools, right? So we want to use AI to design learning activities, for example, the voiceover, the apps that I show people. But we don't really have a very systematic way as an educator to do it, right? So it's not like if you look at the curriculum design for math, you know, like at this grade, you should do this, this, and this. But if you think about the design of using AI for teaching a particular subject, there's no guideline for that, right? So that can be problematic. For example, if you click, if you have the ChatGPT Pro, right? So there's a drop-down list. By default, it's GPT 4.0, right? And then you can choose, for example, 4.5 Pro, preview is available. And there are reasoning models, right? So I guess many of you probably just use the default ones. That solves most of the problem, which is good. But other models, more specialized models, will have their use in the future, right? So if you, that's why people specialize models, right? So again, going back to the job market, so the reason why we have students in university is to prepare them for the job market, right? So then in this case, if you have different type of models, they have their own use. We should try to design our learning activity around different type of models. For example, I have never thought about any learning activity I can utilize the reasoning model. Okay, so, but reasoning model has its own use. Okay? So if we don't teach students, at least we don't make them aware the particular, application of reasoning model in the future job market, they're missing out basically, right? So that's also how you can differentiate a person who just used ChatGPT versus using ChatGPT well, right? So that's my proposal. I was expecting my department head to be here, but no. So basically, and this is also generated by AI, is that I think we should also have this kind of events to hear from students, right? So we can organize a hackathon, and I'm happy to support pizza and everything, right? To have students come in and tell us what they do, how they use GenAI, right? So what they think GenAI can actually help them in terms of learning, right? So we can even have some prototype. We can offer some, paid account for students to play with, so that we can have some prototype in the end, and we can try to see if we can actually use it in the future teaching, right? So learning from the students is also very important, because nowadays everything's universal. From the instructor perspective, we would have very narrow focused lens. But on students, we'll get more, basically. Yeah, I think that's my last slide. And, I think that's it.
Well, Jenny, quick jump.
Alright, so I've been to a few of these talks around AI now, and the thing that I don't hear that I would like for you to reflect on for me is we're a university. And we're effectively a forestry. And there's a couple of things that I think are part of what we try to do here. One is around sustainability, one is around ethics, and one is around critical thinking. And I haven't heard in any of these talks a real deep engagement with that question when it comes to the use of AI. The copyright issue with regard to its training data, and we're asking students not to plagiarize, but they're using tools that themselves are plagiarizing tools. Sustainability, we're use tools that are heavy energy and water usage tools, right? Critical thinking, we are asking to use a tool that often we would love for them to check everything and make sure it all is correct. And we know that a lot of the students are going to just use it as a plug and play type of tool. And they're not going to go in and do that. And it's doing some of that work for them to think through the problem that they're going. So how do we balance some cool stuff with essentially going against what I would argue are three central tenets of what we try to do at the university? And I'd just love to hear some thought about that, because I haven't heard that in the previous talks about AI that we have had at this faculty.
I have a quick answer to that.
Sure, go for it.
Yeah, I think the first question is related to the AI literacy, right? So we actually, if you kind of search AI literacy, people actually start to put together the things like what is the technical definition and also the ethical concerns. So those are related to AI literacy, and that's also something I was thinking about is how we can. I have probably a few slides when I talk about AI in my course, so we cover a little bit like this, but I agree we should have a systematic AI literacy course or even like kind of educating students about those things. And the other two, the sustainability part is exactly this slide, because the reason why OpenAI actually set it to GPT-4o is that's a good balance between the capability of the AI model and energy consumption. So 4o has smaller, like a number of parameters, the weight of the model, and it basically reduce energy consumption during the inference time. Of course, you can even use smaller models than GPT-4 to work on different tasks. So when I kind of present this to my students, I always think of asking them which type of model you want to use. You don't necessarily always have to use the most advanced model. That speaks to that part as well. The third part, the critical thinking, yeah. So probably you can speak to that because that really goes a lot into the activity design. How do you actually?
Such a small question.
I got small questions.
Yeah, that's really huge. From my perspective, these sort of ethical concerns are huge. This is a developing technology that is developing so fast. I don't think we're at this stage where we even understand how to really, protect that sort of learning environment. Students are just jumping across no matter what. Even like in my case where I presented them, here's UBC approved, and they're like, and would rather, I want the immediate answer, which in a communication course, if it's a writing thing, it's an ability. I want to improve your ability. So I make it clear at the beginning of the course, when it starts, and probably several times throughout, is I'm working on improving your ability. If you're using AI, that's cutting into increasing your ability. So I'm basically putting the onus on the students. If you want to increase your ability, do it yourself. We'll use AI after, and we can compare your writing once you've gone through the process, maybe you got an A+, and what AI would do. Let's have a look at those and see. Then, it's kind of like if you've gone to a wine tasting or beer tasting, you taste one and it's like, oh, okay, it's beer or it's wine. But you put two together and you can see the differences and the nuances. So that's what in my course, I'm trying to get students to notice. This is what AI does well, and this is what it doesn't do well. What it doesn't do well is help me understand or increase my personal ability, my communication ability. It's bypassing all that. So maybe I will use it in a subsequent way to sort of up the game at the end after, if I'm writing an email or something, I want it to sound more professional for a job or something. That's my attempt. Greg, did you have a question?
Yeah, direct to our first speaker there. I teach coding as well, and what I find out students doing is just handing it this thing and say, do this for me, and what comes back when you only need about 5 lines of code to answer the problem is 3.5 pages. And it's way more sophisticated than anything I've ever covered in the course. And they put their hands up and yeah, my code won't run. And I look at this and it's like, I haven't talked about any of this yet, right? And okay, so set that aside. That's what they're doing. They're just hoping everything is going to work out. Then they want us to make the boat go when the boat doesn't go. Now, I've done this myself. I took my own solution to one of their labs, dropped it into ChatGPT-4, and saw what came back. And I spent 2 hours going through what it gave me back compared to me, like line by line. And I only made 3 changes to my code afterwards. And then I tried to communicate to the students that if you want to understand what you're doing, you have to do that. You have to take it apart line by line, and you have to convince yourself that it's doing what you want, which is my final point. How do you know it's giving you the right answer? You have to validate everything, and nobody does that.
I think for coding, so coding is also less of a problem for validation, right? So your code runs, and so you probably know, there are a couple ways where your code will not run. These are area running, right? So, or then you have, for example, the benchmark data you compare with. I think
You need analytical solutions where you know what the answer is. It gives you back answers that look like they may be correct, but you don't know for sure. So you've got to go back to an analytic case as simple as possible. And if that works, your simulation may be correct, but you still don't know for sure.
I think it depends on the type of problem you try to use the code to solve. Like, in our domain, so basically a life cycle assessment, right? I'll say you can generate a number, and then number itself does not really tell you right or wrong, because your, global potential can be 100, 101. It doesn't really tell you which correct answer is correct. So then the validation part will really go back to, for example, if you do coding, you need to look at it. Going back to analytical, and why do you use this particular equation? Why does the the coefficient should be like this? Right. So that's actually, Greg, that speaks to your question. Like, how do you do the validation? For coding, you can ask student. Like I do like code review with my student. Just kind of tell me which function, this function, what does it do? We don't go line by line, but we kind of go function by function. So that's why I say like coding itself probably is the least of the challenge. Then the bigger challenge is, for example, writing things, right? And also,
You can get it to give you the code that you want, but what you have to do is iterative. You go back and I'm sorry I'm leaving, but I got a meeting at one I got to go to. You end up having to sort of restate your question over and over again, getting ever more precise parameters. In the case of coding and functions, these are the arguments, these are the types, this is what I want coming back. And this is, by the way, the algorithm I want you to use to solve it. And at that point, your level of understanding goes up hugely, right?
yeah. So that actually reminds me of an article. Recently read it. It's called a design specification for design to like a software. So usually when you design the software, you need to have a solution specification. Exactly, is that what function, what it does, arguments.
Thank you. Can you send that to me, please?
I'll do that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it all comes to how we design our questions and assignment to the class. Another question for both of you guys. We don't want to stop students using AI, and then I think it's fair of design our question will be the academic part. We want to design our assignment that they can use AI at the same time. They have to think or achieve the topic we want them to have. Do you guys have any like experience or tips on designing questions? Like if we design a question for them to report, they can easily cover and find the result from ChatGPT and put it on our assignment. For mathematics questions, it's so easy. You put assignment, they give you the answer right away. So that's for next generation, when they are applying more and more AIs, we have to think about the questions provided to them. Well, we couldn't guarantee they have the integrity, right? Or they have the honesty of doing assignments.
I've gone through some of my assignment instructions and put them in AI and just, how can I make this better? And it puts it out much better than I would do. And then, but I have to put in the guardrails for it and say, this is the assignment instructions. Ask me questions until you are 99% sure of what I want the student to do. And so it will ask questions, and usually one of them is, can students use AI to answer this question? It's like, no, absolutely not. You put something in there that will say no, or I'll refer it to the scale. You can only spell check, that sort of thing. So providing the AI with some background is really helpful. One thing I did is for any sort of kind of neurodivergence, ADHD, things like that, it would just put a box around a paragraph and separate the paragraphs in boxes so the students could focus on one thing at a time. instead of a whole thing of text where their mind would wander after a few seconds. And I did a few different chapters like that. And I got great reports from the students saying that that really helped them learn. Again, using AI for evil, it's going to be a thing until we get this figured out.
There was somebody else. I think that my question is with regards to the voiceovers. So I noticed that most of your voiceovers were from the same demographic. So I wonder if the accessible pool to read can somehow emulate the diverse student body that we have. If you consider.
Actually, mine aren't from the same demographic. They're all over the place. I just completed designing a course for some students in China who are planning on coming here. And I used 4 different English variations. So we had British English, American English, Indian, and there was one other. The other one, but there was 4 Australian. So it really showed the differences. So that way, and I put each question in all 4 so that students could see the variation. So if they get into a testing situation or something, they could understand it easier. So I think that's there. Maybe it will be better soon. Yeah, the full diversity is really not there yet.
Technically speaking, people can already do this. You can specify the type of, English, so it's available.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions? I have one. Overall, do you have evidence of students being happy with the tools you use? Like in the student evaluations, you can see that, oh yeah, it's explicit. Do they say it's wonderful that you're using these tools? We don't see them much in other courses. Keep it up.
No, but that's a good question to ask.
The students are very happy.
Yeah.
That's my only evaluation criteria I can get it. Happy face, that's it.
I just had my test where students, before you must read the textbook for the quiz, but now it's like, oh, I read it and I listened to all 4 and go and ask them, are you really? And they're like, yeah, it's so fun, it's cool. So, yeah. And I have the test scores, but nothing like a course evaluation.
I think that should be it. If there's no more questions, thank you so much.